I can't tell you how thrilled I am to be here today. This is the 11th time I've presented. I was there at their first gathering, and it's a real thrill to come back here every year. I'm the daughter of a milkman in Australia and very proud of my blue-collar upbringing. But being rich, what does this mean? The dictionary has a wealth of definitions, including an abundance of material possessions or money, the state of being rich, material prosperity, a great quantity of money, valuable possessions, property, or other riches. I am wealthy, but I am rich in so many ways. But I have no savings, no property. I live on a minimum salary. I don't own a car. I have no superannuation to secure my retirement, but I do enjoy great abundance. We have a wonderful opportunity to both redefine and discover our sense of wealth. In my mind, wealth isn't just about making money. I'm no academic. I didn't even finish grade 9. My learning has come from the University of Life. I passed many units with credit and distinction, and I cheated on some and failed to turn up for others. I will take the option to be my bold and brassy self and declare I have a doctorate in life. My limited research on the topic shows that there may be 7 elements that any person would want to raise to world-class levels before they can be called rich. They are inner wealth, physical wealth, family and social wealth, career wealth, economic wealth, and adventure wealth. I must admit to achievements and gifts in all these areas. Inner wealth includes a positive mindset, high self-respect, internal peace, and a strong spiritual connection. Your health is your wealth. What's the point of getting to a great place in your career if you get sick doing it? Why be the best business person in the hospital ward? Why be the richest person in the graveyard? When your family life is happy, no matter its construct, you will perform better in life. No one gets to the end of their life and regrets making family their first priority. Related to this is the imperative of forging deep connections with friends and members of your own community, including mentors, role models, and trusted advisors. Actualizing your highest potential by reaching your best in your career is incredibly important. Getting to greatness in your profession brings a feeling of satisfaction in a job well done. It helps you make your mark. Being world-class in your work is so good for your self-respect. Yes, money is important. Not the most important thing in life, but very important. It absolutely makes life easier and better. Money allows you to live in a nice home, take beautiful holidays, and provide well for those you love. To be fulfilled, each of us needs mystery in our lives. Challenge is necessary for happiness. The human brain craves novelty, and we are creative beings, so we need to be creating constantly if we hope to feel joy. Lots of adventure, ranging from meeting new people to visiting new places, is an essential element of authentic wealth. We see on television and through the print media the things that we should have, and it is difficult to ignore all of this. For 18 years, I lived a privileged life in the Australian embassies in Phnom Penh, Manila, the Philippines, Thailand, and lastly in Washington, DC. But I distinguished myself most in Iran. All by myself, I managed to marry the only alcoholic Shiite Muslim in existence. My life then took a 90-degree turn, and I went back to Cambodia to work for Prince Norodom Ranariddh, the son of King Sihanouk, in his small cabinet office. He was then the first Prime Minister after the UN elections. As fate would have it, during the 70s, he was the embassy's landlord for my apartment, and I used to go every Sunday to his home and met with him and his wife and pay the rent. We became friends. What a coincidence? Einstein said that coincidences are God's way of remaining anonymous. There I answered his English correspondence, did some speeches for him, and completed their security and protocol manuals. On the weekends, I spent time in his wife's orphanage, being with the children that were eventually destined to become my life. Today, I'll talk about all the things I value in my life. as wealth and abundance. Many of these definitions of wealth will resonate with you, but for most of us here today, we take these things for granted. Let me start with having the unconditional love of a child, never having experienced hunger, being born in a country that has never had a war fought on its territory or being occupied by a foreign power, being able to criticise our politicians privately and publicly without fear of arrests or assassination, knowing that the fire department will arrive to fight a fire in your house without having to pay the firemen in cash first, being born in a country that has a reliable, experienced and trained ambulance staff, not having to pay a bribe if taken to an emergency hospital ward, knowing I will have power every time I need electricity at the flick of a switch, being able to bathe and enjoy a hot bath and not having to wash in a polluted river, being able to drink tap water without fear of infection or even death, being in a country with a public transportation service to get wherever I want to go, seeing children that come to Sunrise as abandoned and emotionally and physically damaged grow up to be balanced adults with university degrees, jobs and families of their own, knowing that I have loyal, loving friends and family, having had a safe and loving childhood in Australia, being in a country where the right to education is the norm, being in a country that has a vigorous human rights program, where we have a social welfare program for those in need, knowing that our political elections are free and fair and not plagued with corruption, surviving breast cancer. I had a double mastectomy in 2010. Enjoying travel, knowing I'm raising money for Sunrise at the same time. Enjoying the creative pleasure of writing my books. Knowing that I am fulfilling my destiny. Waking up in the morning and loving everything that I have to do that day. How many of us can say that? Eventually coming to the realization that stuff does not make you happy. Our lives are determined first by the country we're born in. If you were born in the West, your life is going to be pretty much okay. But if you were born in rural Cambodia or the backwoods of Bangladesh, you can be reasonably sure that your life is going to suck. My own desire for life and work is that not a single child in Cambodia will live in poverty. Probably not really possible, but a great dream to have. To achieve this, a certain kind of wealth must be reached, not the wealth where you can go out and buy a flat-screen TV or the latest iPhone. That's material wealth, and it can be given and taken away. I have found that the kind of wealth that can lift a whole section of society out of poverty is not one that can be given. It must be created. In a country where a huge percentage of people live hand to mouth, giving someone a few extra dollars a week gives them more rice for their kids' bowl, more fuel for their motorbike and more tobacco for their pouch. It might even bring them above the poverty line, but it makes them completely reliant. It strips them of independence. It is not what will bring every single Cambodian child out of poverty. I want to talk more about the lack of wealth in Cambodia, particularly in areas of education and health. It's a very different situation. And to remind you of why everything is in such tatters, let me give you a thumbnail history of the country. Before 1902, when the country was a French protectorate, Cambodia was an almost unknown, peaceful, rice-growing rural paradise. Under French administration, the people had little power over their day-to-day lives until King Sihanouk negotiated independence from the French in the mid-50s. It was to be a new beginning, but the Cambodians were given very little time to make a success of this new start. The French had installed a perfectly good system of education based on the French system, which basically fell apart with the start of the Vietnam War in 1970. More tonnage of bombs were dropped in rural Cambodia than was dropped in Japan for the whole length of World War II. This was under the inspired doctrine of Nixon and Kissinger. I would like 10 minutes in a dark room with Mr. Kissinger with a big stick. More than 1 million innocent farmers and families were killed during this carpet bombing. I was there at the time. I heard it and I saw it. Then on top of that are the more than 2 million victims of the genocide program under the infamous Pol Pot. From 1970 to the early 90s, the education system was in complete shambles. The next step backwards in Cambodia's history was in 1975, when the Khmer regime took over the country with disastrous effects for almost every aspect of Cambodian society. In just 4 years, from 75 to 79, under Pol Pot, anyone who attended a school over the age of 7 was put to death because they were educated. Teachers, doctors, architects, engineers, lawyers, journalists, artists, public servants, everyone they could find that were pillars of society were assassinated or put in labour camps where they died of starvation. All money was burned. Even the family unit was destroyed, with husbands, wives and children being separated and put to work in labour camps, divided from each other. Pagodas were burned, monks were murdered, religion was abolished. Libraries, all books and even the register of births, deaths and marriages were burnt. Records of land titles were also destroyed. People were reduced to an animal-like level, often with farm animals being fed more food and treated better than they were. Out of a population of 7 million in 1975, over 2 million were killed through starvation, assassination, torture or hard labour, a third of the population then. Even today in modern Phnom Penh, there is no one who has not lost a close family member, or if they survived, are living with memories so tormenting that many of them cannot function normally. It is not an exaggeration to say that all the survivors of the killing fields of 75 to 79 are suffering from various degrees of post-traumatic stress disorders that are not being treated, because there are very few psychiatrists or psychologists in Cambodia. They were all killed. Then in late 79, the Vietnamese, the North Vietnamese, not the South Vietnamese, who fought and lost the war against communism, marched on Cambodia and liberated the Cambodian by ousting Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge from power. But the terror was not over for the Cambodians, who were then subjected to the very communism that they fought so hard to resist before Pol Pot ruined their lives. Under the Vietnamese occupation from 79 to 92, communism was forced upon them, and again, they were not the masters of their own fate. The Vietnamese, to be fair, recognised the need for the people to be more educated, but there was no one left alive to do this. They shipped those considered to be capable to other communist countries like China, USSR, Poland and Czechoslovakia, where they studied and learned communist ways that they brought home with them. Slowly, the deserted schools and universities began to awaken and take in students, but it was not until the United Nations came in to supervise the departure of the Vietnamese army in 92 that the education system was free to try and organise itself from the ashes. Even today, no university degree from Cambodia is recognised internationally. Most of the professors aren't really that highly qualified. It was a bit like handing a baby to a mother who knew nothing about how to bring it up, democracy. But with the terrors of Pol Pot days still ringing in their heads, the people were afraid to embrace education. It was a death sentence, because what they had learned was that it was dangerous to be educated. At the government primary schools, Sunrise often has to provide desks and chairs for them because the school has no money. In schools of over 2,000 children are often only 2 toilets. 2,000 children, 2 toilets. Think about that for a moment. The main reason why girls stop attending schools is for the very simple fact that when they start to menstruate, there's nowhere clean, no suitable toilet facilities, so they stay home. That's the end of their education. The whole education is an area where Cambodia has to make huge steps before it can come out of the mist. There are no computers, no electricity or air conditioning, no canteens, no playing fields, no extracurricular activities, no substitute teachers, and not even enough books often for everyone. and any misbehaviour is punished with a firm swish of a long bamboo cane. And if you believe in reincarnation, you would definitely hope that you do not come back as a child of current-day Cambodia. And if education is a measure of wealth, then Cambodia is one of the poorest nations in the world. There is an enormous gap between the rich and the poor in Cambodia. There's a Rolls-Royce dealership in Cambodia which has plenty of customers. Earlier this year, a Phnom Penh tycoon spent over $1 million on his daughter's wedding, and all guests were given the key to a new car as a gift. How obscene is that? It is rare to see children of kindergarten age playing constructively, as they do not have the toys that we are familiar with, and their parents can't also help them because they never had toys when they were little either. Children play quite happily for hours with rubber bands, tin cans, coconut shells, old bicycles, spare parts and flippers. A good education for primary-age children, even for those families that can afford to pay, is seriously limited because the salaries as teachers is as low as $120 a month and does not attract people or students who want to study educational courses at the local universities. There's not enough for them to live on. Most children grow up in an environment of impoverishment in every sense of the word. The sunrise school bus drives past many of the farmers' children in the rice fields, and the kids wave to us and smile as we drive by, but you can see the desire in their eyes to be on that bus. For them, school is just a dream. At Sunways, we care for many abandoned children from local hospitals and have a good working relationship with many hospital staff. Parents of sick children often have to sell a cow to get their child to a medical centre. And then one of two things happen. The doctors either say, your child is likely to get sick again, but they're all right now, but they are more likely to get sick. So the parents who don't have another cow to sell to bring their children to hospital again abandon them, hoping someone like Sunrise will come along. The second thing that happens, the doctors tell them your child's going to die. And these poor parents don't have money for a funeral. So they leave their kids there, hoping again Sunrise will come to the help of their children. And we give them good Buddhist funerals when they do die. I'm reminded all the time of the sadness of the work that I do. Children come to Sunrise in many different ways. Some are trafficked in Thailand into prostitution, slave labour, begging rings, and illegal adoption companies. Others come from hospitals and dysfunctional families. Mum's a drug addict, dad's a gambler, some of them are on drugs, so the police come in and bring the kids to us. Once in the Sunrise home, we give them shelter, food, clothes, medical and dental care, classes in English, computer and Mandarin, Khmer music and dance, which is wonderful for their confidence, field trips, counselling, tennis, boxing and swimming. At the Southeast Asian Games, 2 of my kids, one girl won gold and her brother won bronze at the Southeast Asian. And yay! And another girl won a bronze in tennis, and they all learnt at Sunrise their sport. So proud of them. We even donate towards their wedding receptions, as they have no family to help with this. And Sunrise gives 200 and I give 100. So each kid gets 300 from us. So one of my more enterprising boys stood up and said, Mum, if I marry Sachita over there, that means we get 600, right? He'll get on, that boy. Part of our program in Cambodia is to provide residential care for children with HIV, AIDS, TB, polio, hepatitis B, brittle bone disease, acquired aplastic anemia, which is the disease caused by the spraying of Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. Thanks again, America. And we have varying degrees of cerebral palsy and mental and emotional conditions, which make it hard for a lot of the kids to go to school. Cambodia can be a dangerous, depressing, dirty and difficult country. To give you an idea of a typical day, I woke up in the morning and the police were at the door with 6 of my teenage boys who had been playing truant and were found in an internet watching porn. So the police brought them to us and I read the riot act. Just after I'd solved that, a little girl was bitten by a snake, so we had to rush her to the hospital to make sure she got the antidote. Again, my regular checks on food in the kitchen. The kitchen never knows when I'm going to do this, but I went through all the receipts that the cook had bought food, and there was a receipt for 15 kilos of of pork, and I went and weighed the pork and found there was only 3 kilos. So I fired him on the spot. We don't accept any kind of stealing at Sunrise. I was getting a bit tired by this, and then just as I thought I could relax, I was told by the staff that one of our house mothers, who is supposed to be having 10 children in her care, was having an affair with the night guard. Instead of being in the dormitory with the kids, she was sleeping with the night guard. So this is all something that happens before noon. That's a typical day. So now I get up in the morning and I have a coffee and sit down and I say, "Okay, Cambodia, what have you got? Hit me." Every day I know I'm going to laugh, cry, get angry and be frustrated, but I could never leave this country. Lai Thai's an intelligent young boy with great potential, and his mother sold him into a begging group in Thailand, and he's crippled with cerebral palsy, and he walks with calipers. When he was rehabilitated back into Cambodia and joined Sunrise, he stole everyone's heart. He's just a delightful kid. And one day I asked each child, I was doing profiles for their sponsors, and I asked each kid, if you had half an hour with Buddha, what would you ask him for? And the boys were saying computers, a motorbike, the girls were saying jewellery, a rich husband. And when I got to Lai Thai, he's sitting there in the chair swinging his legs that didn't reach the ground in his calipers. And I said, "Darling, what would you ask Buddha for?" And he said, "Oh, Mum, Buddha's very busy. I don't want to bother him. I don't want anything." And I said, "But there must be something you want. I have to write to your sponsors. What do you want?" I was getting to be impatient with him. And he said, "Well, Mum, there is one thing. If Buddha makes me," I'm going to lose this, "if Buddha makes me a good person in this life, maybe in the next life, I will have a mother who loves me and keeps me, and I can run like other children." This boy knows about real wealth. Sorry with all the sad stories, but I'm just trying to paint a picture of life in Cambodia. One of my greatest failures was a little 8-month-old baby called Noodles, because he'd been abandoned on a noodle stall at one of the markets. My friends took me there one morning hoping that I would take him back to Sunrise, but it was the day before I was going on a fundraising trip to Australia and I didn't have time to organise it. So I looked in his eyes and I said, "Hello, darling, Noodles, I'll be back in a week and I'll come and get you." If you could imagine, when I returned after a week and I found that his eyes had been harvested and cut out to sell to the illegal black market for organs, where his retinas would be sold to the highest bidder. I completely lost it and screamed and smashed plates in the shop, and they packed up and ran away with Noodles before the police came. I never saw him again, and I have no idea what happened to him. I failed him, and I will never forgive myself. There are more extreme cases where kids have been taken away and had their organs, like hearts and lungs, taken to sell on the organ market, and their bodies just thrown in the river. Street children do not have a family to complain that their kids are missing, so they just disappear and no one cares. Some stories of more Sunrise kids. 16-year-old really intelligent kid was helping with my filing one day, and he was looking really sad, and I said, "What's the matter, darling?" And he said, "Mum, I want to know, why did my mother throw me away?" What can you say? I can just reply with a big hug. Another teenager girl who has deep post-traumatic disorder problems said she dreams of her dead mother at night and feels unloved and wants to join her. I told her that I love her, but she said, "Oh, you love everybody. I want just one person to only love me." And isn't this what we all want? She attempted suicide twice. And how can you forget that there is a thriving market for men to have sex with disabled children? Double amputees, deaf, blind, mentally disturbed, the whole range. When I heard about this, I went to a friend in the government anti-child trafficking unit and begged her to put a stop to this and send their plainclothes policemen to stop this market. She was a Pol Pot survivor, a really hardened woman. And she looked at me and a big tear ran down her wrinkled face and she said, "Geraldine, we know all about it, but we can't do anything because the police are getting their cut." It's times like this that I go home, pour myself a triple gin and tonic and bang my head against the wall because there's some things I can't fix. I just have to keep on telling myself that I should not look at the big picture, but simply do the best for the kids whose fate it is to walk through our gates. I tell the new kids when they arrive, and they are very scared of me, some of them haven't seen foreigners at all, that the worst is over and from now on everything will be all right. But for me to keep that promise, I need money. Now, time for some good stories. Are we ready for some good stories? Yeah? Okay. Petra was 16 and in grade 5, not because he wasn't clever, but he just played truant all the time and just didn't turn up, so it was no point sending him back to school. So he was very gay, so we found vocational training for him in a beauty school, where he learnt hairdressing, nails, makeup, all that kind of thing. And after he graduated from that and was working for 6 months, I had lunch with him in town and I said, "Okay, Petra, how's life?" And he said, "Mum, I'm working for the biggest Cambodian TV, where I travel all over the country and do the makeup and hair of Cambodia's most famous actresses. I get my food, my travel, my accommodation, water, everything paid for, $800 a month salary, and I didn't need maths and physics for that." He's a real character. He's actually earning more than my lawyers or civil engineers and is a great role model for the other kids for them to know that anything is possible. Over the years, I've been fortunate to secure scholarships for some kids to study in Australia and have now returned with degrees in nursing, media, communications, hotel management and hospitality, and working in good jobs back home. The majority have attended universities in Sydney, Adelaide and Brisbane. In Phnom Penh, we have young people studying bachelor's degrees at local universities in law, medicine, civil engineering, architecture, agriculture, banking, social welfare, international relations, banking, finance, administration, education and management. So they're doing the whole lot. And these are the next generation who will be able to bring Cambodia out of the mist and give it real wealth. Sunrise also provides vocational training for those that didn't pass grade 12. Not all of us are academic, as you know. So we give them vocational training in car mechanics, air conditioning repairs, engineering, plumbing, electricity, mobile phones and generator repair, cooking, floristry and beauty therapy. A far better life than being on the streets. Many of our kids just come from simple farming backgrounds where they plant rice or take the cows out to eat. That's what most of them, what their most backgrounds are. And Sunrise saves them from this kind of future. Cambodians are now accessing the internet, and children often talk to me about what they see and hear. It's an uphill job assuring them of a good future when they are constantly being reminded on international news service of man-made mayhem, madness, murder, misery and violence, sexual deviance, crime, drugs, disease, terrorism, war, economic crises, racism, homophobia, terrorism, suicide bombers, and Mother Nature's way of saying she's unhappy with us, with famines, global warming, earthquakes, tsunamis, floods and fires. This is the world we are all living in today. Several years ago, I was on an ABC show called Talking Heads, and the next day I got a call from one of my sponsors and a close friend, and she said, Geraldine, you have to know how some Australians perceive you. She said, yesterday I entertained a lot of my big clients, and one of the women at the table had watched the show. And she said, oh, did any of you see that annoying woman with the silly hairstyle on Talking Heads last night? Can't stand her. She's loud, she's pussy, and she's aggressive. So I wrote back to her and I said, what are you talking about? They're my attributes. If people don't know who you are, where you are, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and how to get money to you, how can any charity survive? So loud, aggressive, and pushy I will always be. In the past, Sunrise was a residential facility only, providing the best possible care for children in need, and this has now changed. And we always will have children in our care, especially the disabled and trafficked, but we are now tackling the great need in Cambodia for community-based development facilities to community children where they come and attend nursery school and learn all the English and math and computers and enjoy all the other classes that the residential kids have. Our core business is education. We know, as Nelson Mandela once said, that education has the power to change the world. The terms orphans and orphanages have been generally accepted words for years to describe the approach taken across the world to care for vulnerable children. But this new political correctness now demands that we cannot use these words, orphans and orphanages. We have to replace them with disadvantaged children residential centres and for children at risk. What a nonsense. We are an orphanage with orphans. No point in following that political correctness. I hate political correctness. Do you? It's driving me nuts. Child and family assessments by the government and our own social workers are doing everything possible for kids to be reintegrated back into their families and communities where it is possible. We continue to pay for their education after they leave and visit regularly and provide crisis care when required. We also enrol many of their adults in their families into vocational training and offer microloans to help them establish a business and improve their income and thereby raising the living standard of the whole family. In some cases, we repair houses, provide adequate kitchens and bathrooms that previously were not existing. Not all these reintegrations are successful. Sometimes parents do not send them to school and sell their bicycles and laptops that we gave them to take home. Everything in life is about change, and this is no exception. Sunrise has embraced this new world of thinking, and we are working hard to achieve all the challenges involved. One of the most rewarding and exciting things I've ever done in my life was to get out of my comfort zone. Before I moved to Cambodia, I had a very comfortable and privileged lifestyle, but that all changed in Cambodia. You never know what you are made of until your backs are against the wall. I pity those who spend their whole lives being safe and comfortable and never know what they can really be. Don't take my word for it, try it. Get out of your comfort zone. The most dangerous time in my life was during the bloody coup in 1997, where the military government overthrew the royal family and fled. I was then working for the princess at her orphanage, and I was known to be a royalist and in great physical danger. What I didn't know was that the orphanage land had previously been a military barracks, and Princess Marie never told me this. And I'm out there with the kids, and one day a tank rolls through the gate, 6 soldiers on it, and they had B-40 rockets and AK-47s pointing them at the kids. And they said, "Get off our land, this is our land." And the kids are kneeling in the dust, many of them wetting themselves with fear. When I'm angry, my Khmer improves, and I get very fluent. And I'm going up to these soldiers and I'm saying, "Does your mother know what you're doing here today?" And it was going right over their heads. And then the leader, who would have only been about 21, 22, he looked at me really closely, up and down, looked at me, thought. He put his gun down and he nudged the soldier next to him and he pointed at me, and that soldier looked me up and down, thought, put his gun down, and so it went down to the 6th soldier. And in the end, they all put their guns away and they just got on the tank and left. And we all went back inside of the dining room. We're laughing and crying, and, we nearly got killed. And then some of the older boys and the staff started laughing, and they said, "What are you laughing at? That was not funny." And they said, "Oh, Mum, it was your hair that saved us." Now, in Cambodia, they're a very superstitious race of people. They believe in ghosts and goblins and potions and witches, the whole spiel. And the boys said, there's a very famous witch in Cambodia where wives go to when their husbands are unfaithful. And this witch turns their husbands' penises to the size of a pea. And they reckoned the guards thought, no one's got red hair like this lady. And they decide not to take a chance, and that's why they left. So I am never without my hair colour in Cambodia. It's my safety net. The kids were sure that I must have been this family witch, as there was no one in the country with hair as red as mine. When I first moved to Cambodia and took a group of vulnerable war children into my care, I had a crude idea of how children and families in my care could attain the kind of personal wealth that I hold so dear. I gave them these things: an education, opportunity, infrastructure, security, so they would grow up to be as wealthy as me. So I gave them a roof to sleep under. I put the children in school. I took them to the doctors when they were sick. I protected them and I cared for them and filled them with love and respect and gave them the belief that they could be whatever they wanted to be. I tell them it is not where you came from, but what you become that defines you. Remember that. And for these children and families, it was enough. The stories of success that have come out of the kids' families that I have cared for are incredible. Trust me, if you saw firsthand how a sunrise child who was born with nothing grasps at a small opportunity and just runs with it, you would give up everything to put these kids through school, through university, and see what they become. If they were born into communities that already had these rights and freedoms, they wouldn't have gone through all the hardships that brought them to me in the first place. When I realised this, I knew that things had to change. I've been called many things: a humanitarian, a hero, a witch, that pushy red-haired lady who always asks you for money. And some of these are truer than others. I'll leave you to figure that out. But something that I'm really called is flexible. Stubble, pig-headedness and tenacity have got me everything in life. It got me my ticket out of the country as a young woman, and it stopped me from being fired more times than once. And it gave me the strength to rescue a group of war orphans from the border of Thailand and demand that they have a right to a life that is good and fair and filled with love. But for once in my life, I was flexible and I changed my focus. Instead of treating the symptoms of poverty and corruption and war, I would work on the cause. Instead of giving a boy or a girl a fish and a family a home, I would make sure that the opportunity to learn how to fish was accessible and available to them. I refused to pay sponsors money on public relations or a publicist. What I used to do and still do, I ring up from Cambodia to all these speaking bureaus and say, "Hi, my name's Mandy Smith. I'm Geraldine Cox's publicist. And if you're looking for a public speaker, please consider she's really something. You won't regret it. So call me back if you want her to speak at one of your events." And I often get calls to pick it up and they say, "Can we speak to Mandy Smith?" I say, "I'm sorry, Mandy's on holidays. Can I help you?" And I get many of my gigs that way. And what I love about Mandy, she doesn't cost me anything and she's always there. COVID was a disaster for Sunrise, and I had to close 2 centres because many of our donors lost their jobs and businesses and had to stop their payments. I got to a stage where I only had 4 months left, and I was looking at the real possibility that I was going to have to close the centre, put the kids into orphanages, government orphanages where you wouldn't put your dog, firing 50 people, giving back my house. I would have no salary. I would be ending up living with my driver, who's a wonderful ex-Sunrise boy that said, "If this happens, Mum, you can come and live with us." And that's where I was. I was beside myself with stress and worry. Then the universe came to my side and arranged for me to be in a national human interest show, Current Affair, for those ones that are Australian. And I told my story. They rang me up and they said, do you want to be on Current Affair? We hear you're having a rough time. And I said, yes. And I said, when? And they said, in 10 minutes. And I said, oh, shit, give me time to go and put my hair up and put my lipstick on, right? So I went on the stage, and because it was all raw and I hadn't had time to practice my speech, I lost it and said, I can't give my fit kids food. I can't give them fruit. We have to cut down on everything. I don't know what I'm going to do. And in 3 weeks, the Australian public raised $600,000 for us. Thank you, Australia. And that solved all our problems, and we were saved and have not looked back since. Again, let me share some of my greatest successes in Cambodia. Wow, spelt W-A-E-W, wow. She'd been sold by her mother into Thailand into a begging ring, where her life was a sheer living hell. And eventually the Office of International Migration arrested her for being an alien in the country and put her in the immigration prison, where things happened to her there that I don't even want to talk about. But Wow had suffered acid burns by the begging ring, who had thrown acid all over her face and body. She'd lost an eye and an ear, and she had other horrific facial and body scars. So this girl was going nowhere in life. And when she came back to us, she'd forgotten how to speak Khmer. So she couldn't go to school. So we employed a private tutor for her. And within 1 year, at the age of 10, she'd learnt enough to go back into grade 4 into school. And her intelligence was noticed straight away, and she went right through and understood everything. With her one perfect eye, she read and covered everything. She passed grade 12, and soon after that, she was invited to speak in English in Geneva at the International Burn Victims presentation. So this girl was really going somewhere. Nothing is going to stop her. She told me that when she's in the streets and the markets, people go, oh, monster, look at her, and say horrible and nasty things to her. And I've been with her when the people go like this and point at her. And I said, darling, how do you cope with this? And she said, Mum, I turn up straight and I turn to them and I say, what I look like is not who I am. You just have to love Wow. She is well named. She now has a Bachelor of International Affairs and works in Malaysia with an NGO that selects poor children for scholarships abroad. So her life has really changed, and Sunrise has done that. I'm totally unqualified to do what I'm doing. I left school at the age of 15. I have no university degree. If I approached Australian authorities and said I wanted to work with children of the poor, they said, well, that's nice, Miss Cox. Where's your teacher's degree, your social worker's degree, your nursing degree? And I don't have any of that. I simply do what every parent does when they care for their child. Shelter them, feed them, clothe them, educate them, keep them clean, take care of their medical needs, discipline them and teach them the difference between right and wrong. Protect them, comfort them, wipe away their tears, hug and kiss them, play with them, make them laugh, encourage them, fight their battles for them, teach them to be compassionate and caring, teach them to be kind to animals, make them feel safe, support them, find their talents and nurture them, forgive them, believe in them, teach them tolerance, trust them, guide them, teach them forgiveness and gratitude, tell them they have a future, most of all, love them and tell them that you'll always be there for them. Where's the need for a university degree and all those simple things? You don't have to run off to the jungles of Cambodia to find your purpose in life. You can find your wealth of a different kind in many ways. It can be bringing up a healthy and loving family. It can be in service to the community. It can be in the corporate world, closing big business deals. It can be in the world of academia. It can be in music or the arts. It can be through research. It can be through sport. It can be through medicine and healing. It can be in politics. It can be in your religion. A man who has done more than any of us to dream to achieve, and he put it so simply. Mandela said in his 1994 inaugural speech in Africa, "One of our deepest fears is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear in life is that we are powerful beyond measure. Do not forget your power." I look at all your young faces and wonder if there might be someone here today that will find a cure for cancer, solve the environment problem of the world. You have to do these things because my generation failed you and we didn't do this. If you remember anything that I've told you today, please know that the greatest currency we will ever possess is how you affect others in the world. So always remember to be kind. The Sunrise community knows I'm talking to you today, and they've asked me again to pass on to you their blessings. So again, they wish you long life, health, strength, wisdom, and what we all need most in the world, peace. When I pointed out to some of the children that wealth was not in that list of blessings, one of my 14-year-old boys stood up and rolled his eyes and he said, "Mum, if you've got long life, health, strength, wisdom and peace, you're already rich. You should know that." And I love that my children have taught me far more than I could ever teach them. One thing I teach them, and this might be also useful for you to learn, is that a life must have balance to succeed. I tell them to try and carve out each day spending 8 hours working, 8 hours playing, and 8 hours sleeping. Not easy, but worth giving a try. You won't regret it. In closing, my challenge to you is twofold, one inward and one outward. First, you have an opportunity. Chances are by now you have acquired material wealth. You have acquired all that you need to go on with your life. You may not have reached your goal in any or all of these areas, but you are ahead of most Cambodians born at the same time. But you have all the outward wealth you need in this life and probably the next. Concentrate now on your inner wealth. Concentrate on your relationships. Challenge yourself to do what your heart yearns to do. Take risks and love big because you have the opportunity to do all of this. If you still have not decided what you want to be in life, seek advice from your mentors and your teachers and your families, but trust your heart. It knows you better than anybody else. My second challenge is this. You have an obligation. Through no fault of your own, you were born in the top 5% of wealthiest people in the world. That is not your fault, but if you do nothing to spread this wealth more evenly, you are losing one of the joys of life, giving. If any of you are interested, you can make a tax-free donation by contacting, using the card on your seats and donating to the QR code. It's been a long journey to get to this point, so to this understanding of wealth, and it began with me discovering what wealth truly means on a personal level. Right now, as I stand here, I know that I'm not just the oldest person in the room, I'm the wealthiest person in the room. So finally, enjoy the rest of the symposium, and I wish you all the brightest of futures. And if any of you plan to holiday in Cambodia, I welcome you to visit Sunrise. You'll have a ball. If any of you want to buy my book, I've only got 40 copies. I'm selling them from my room 1154 from when we get back until 7 o'clock. So let's hope I can sell some books and get some money. So thank you very much for listening to me today. Thank you.